Well, joining us today on Arise 360 is Olayinka Babalola, a filmmaker and visual artist whose work is driven by emotion, curiosity, and a deep connection to humanity. With a background in visual arts and a deep love for cinema, Yinka tells powerful stories through film that explore people, places, and lived experiences. She's produced projects such as Soft Ghana and A Study on Love, and she also mentors young creatives through film classes in her community. Today, she joins us to talk about her creative journey, the power of visual storytelling, and her latest documentary, which follows the life of a Bale in the Okoagbon community. The film utilizes this story to shed light on the ongoing displacement in Makoko, capturing it in a deeply human and compelling way that challenges misconceptions and helps audiences truly understand what's happening. Now, let's take a look at the trailer of that documentary, and then when we come back, we'll have a conversation with Yinka as to how she's using that documentary for storytelling, advocacy, and shining a spotlight on the displacement crisis in Makoko.
Mbairo to milikio yoba do otolo na vo dirado iro tolo ekubu inwado memi to wa hodo power na ingrole yo ini tozone ingolo na mi vo tolo dirado tolo mba inu jonu nfi pupon.
They have shoot another person.
Ko mi weke amu plan la dangere. I'm tired of drawing. I'm a plan working down. You don't have plan working down. But the money I know of beautiful God, no people me. You know all and no all and no need. I live on Tombone, to turn those is like go. You know you drum by me.
All right, then. Thank you so much for joining us, Yinka Babalola. We appreciate you. And, I want to say amazing work just because of, I know how much time and effort would have gone into it. But, it comes at such a sad time when we think about what's happening, with the Makoko residents. I want to start with this. You have described your work as, being driven by emotion, curiosity, and a deep connection to humanity. So can you take us back to the moment where you realized that this was a story that you wanted to tell? And why did you pick film as the medium through which you wanted to tell human stories?
Okay. I've been a filmmaker for a good number of years, over half a decade. And I studied visual arts in university. So art has always been like my medium. I've explored different things like graphic design and photography. And eventually I settled on film because it's like my favorite way to tell stories. But in 2022, I met the character, his name is Daniel Hongbeji, during another art project. And his story kind of moved me. I was very curious about his life. At that time, he was a fisherman. The community was thriving, but they had that constant threat of displacement. And so I wanted to tell his story about the life in Makoko, because also what I normally see in that place is that people cover the poverty and the canoes, and they're like, oh, look how happy these poor children are in there, whatever. But I wanted to just see like what life was like there. And I wanted to use his life to highlight the issue of displacement. And I'd been thinking about this project since then. But when I got selected for the Story Me Academy documentary program run by the French Embassy, which was last year, that was when I started actively working on it. And I could have never imagined that while making the documentary, because a lot of these things unfolded while making the documentary, that they would have actually started displacing them to this extent. Even though there had been reports of previous demolitions here and there, it has never been this massive and this large scale, so that's why.
Interesting. So, you just touched on why you felt it was important to tell Daniel's story and through his eyes. And we hear you spent around 3 years working on this project, right? What would you say kept you committed to telling this story and seeing it to the completion, even when it got long and difficult and maybe quite tiring?
I think it's just a genuine love for film. I wouldn't pose myself as an activist or like an advocate. I just love telling stories. And so the 3 years which I'm talking about that I worked on was making project proposals, applying for grants, asking people for money. Like, I have this film idea, I want to make it. But actively filming, it's been about 7 months. And that's been going to the community frequently, spending time with Daniel. I even slept in Makoko at a point, stayed at his house, and just getting to know the story. And I think that's because living in Lagos, you don't realize how much is going on around you. You drive over a Third Mainland Bridge unaware of like the plight that's happening. And even when I was going into making this documentary, I didn't even have the full story either. What I just understood was that, they just want to displace them. But it's actually a lot more than that. And while making the film, I discovered more.
Yeah, and can you go into more of that? Because I think what really struck me about this, especially when we initially had that conversation, is you start telling a story, right? Thinking that it's going to end somewhere, not knowing that in a way you're almost being used as a tool to document, the life, the in and out. Like you even said that you spent time there, and now we think about almost 10,000 people that are displaced from Makoko. What are some of the things that you found out? What's the human angle? Because it's very easy to look at these people as, they're just living on the water, under the bridge. But what are some of those moments that almost humanize these persons so that, it's when we think about displacing them, we can give it a second thought, as it were?
That's a really good question, and it is something that I've thought about. And I will say that in Makoko, from the perspective of the average Lagosian, people look at it as a slum. Yeah. Like, the dirty water, the canoes, and then there's like stuff floating inside there, right? But when I first started going into the community, the thing for me that struck me as much more different from the narrative that I was sold was that these guys are essentially, I would like to say, an economic powerhouse. They have a lot of trade that happens there. Makoko is almost like it's like a fishing village. So the Igun people, a lot of the people there are fishermen. They go out and they bring back, and they're pumping money into the economy. They have occupations. They're not just hiding criminals and, I guess, not sending their kids to school or living in like this horrifically poverty-stricken life that we were led to believe. And then not just that, they have their own culture, they have their own language, they have their own schools, they have their own economy, like right there in that city. And it's almost like a self-sufficient system. So the way it was presented, at least the way that it's presented in mainstream narrative, is that Makoko is a slum and the government needs to clear it out. But that's actually not the case. And when you go there, you'll see that it's a lot more intricate. And what I found out personally was that not just the fact that we've been sold a different narrative than to what's actually the reality, but also I found that the people themselves had been sold a different narrative as to what was going to happen in their community. They told them, okay, we're going to clear this certain amount for your own safety. And so they negotiated a certain distance, and that's including with the community leaders. They negotiated a certain distance from the power lines, only for them to have much more destroyed, much more demolished, and their homes taken away from them, and they weren't even aware.
Very, very quite scary things. To be sold one thing and something else being done. And I kind of feel like for you to have even gotten to the place where you spent a night in this community, I feel like a lot of trust must have been built. So how did you build that trust, and how were you welcomed into the community?
I will say that it was not easy because despite the fact that I do care about what's happening in Makoko, because I don't live there and I don't have that lived experience, it was a lot of getting used to. Time is one huge factor, I think, that was helpful in building trust. Like I said, I met my character in 2022, but I didn't start filming him immediately. And over the years, I visited once or twice, and I told him about the project. I told him about the story that I wanted to tell. And he eventually welcomed me into the community. Him, and his son. And through him, I then met other people in the community that were willing to talk to me. So that's how I think trust was built.
Given what is currently happening in Makoko, why does this film or this documentary feel especially urgent to release now? And beyond awareness, what real-world impact are you hoping that this documentary will have, whether it's in public perception or policy conversations or even direct action by government and citizens alike? Actually, I'll say citizens because it's the government that is kind of displacing them. So
okay, can I break your question into two? Because
of course,
let's start with
the first half.
Yeah.
Why does this film feel especially urgent to release now with what's happening in Makoko?
I think long and short of it is that I feel that the film takes a different approach to what's happening in Makoko than the typical narrative of they're just destroying this place and it's about the power lines. It shows the life that they live there. It shows what day-to-day life is like, how they make their money, what they were told by the government, how there's different characters in the documentary and how they advocated for the community. And also it establishes that this has been a long-standing fight. And so for me, I think that it's very important for us as Nigerians to know that there's a lot more to the story than we realize. It is not just a slum that needs to be cleared out. If they are going to clear it out, it needs to be done in a very humane way. They need to be given alternatives. They need to be given new houses. They need to be given new sources of income because you're not just taking away their homes, but you're also taking away their livelihoods. Now they cannot fish. How are they going to make money? And also, I really wanted it to be the release because I need people to realize that it is everybody's problem. Gentrification is basically what is happening in Makoko. Yeah, it's happening in Makoko, but it also happens in other parts of Nigeria and also parts of the country and also parts of the continent. You see people being displaced in the name of development, and then those people that are displaced in the process of displacement, you're wiping away indigenous cultures, you're wiping away livelihoods, and then you're not giving an alternative. So then these people are now stranded. And then it now becomes whose problem? Our problem.
Society.
Yes, society's problem. You say, oh, there's so many criminals on the street. Oh, there's so many homeless people.
Yeah, where
did they come from?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that's the only reason that criminals exist, but I'm saying that you're making an already bad problem worse by not providing the alternatives. There are multiple schools now in Makoko that have been knocked down. Where are these children going to go to school now? Those kind of things. Like for me, it's I think it's just making people realize that it's everybody's problem, and that's why I wanted to release the documentary. It was not my initial plan.
Yeah.
You know,
it's like they're almost creating desperation in masses, and that's what leads people to doing questionable things that they might not have done to begin with. And I love the medium of film because it not just entertains people, it educates them as well. So your conversation of displacements, this is humanizing it, and using the medium of film and cinema is to almost get an emotional reaction from people to make them care. So how do you think and how do you use cinema and film? How do you think it's going to make people care about this situation?
I hope people see themselves in there. I think that for me, at a point, I saw myself in there too, because last year as well, while making this documentary, funny enough, I was fine, but it's not funny. We also got, there was a house that we lived in Abuja for a long time, for about 7 years. And we lived there legally, paid rent and everything. And then one day, somebody came and they wanted to kick us out. So we took it to court. And while this case was in court, they came and just kicked everybody out of that entire compound. And so and this happened while making this other documentary. And so it kind of made me realize that it is a problem or a thing that can happen to anyone regardless of your social class. And oh my God, what was your question?
No, you're answering it perfectly.
That was it, right? Yeah, so I just didn't want to get carried away, but it can happen to you regardless of your social class. And so for me, it made the story that much more personal because it was like, everybody if you collect, like it can be you, and so I really felt like when people watch it, I really want them to understand that yes, it is happening to people of a certain socioeconomical class in Makoko, but it is not something that is localized to just them. This is something that can happen to literally anyone. So this is everybody's problem, and people should just be concerned about it. I just hope people are more concerned about it. Because when you go on YouTube and you see the videos, the comment sections, you say, good, they've cleaned that place out. That place was a shanty, hiding criminals, this and that, as if they don't hide criminals in all over Nigeria. So
there's
for me,
criminals living in highbrow areas. They've driven around, but I don't want to go there. In just conversing with you, even before this interview and during this interview, I've seen you go to an emotional place, and it makes sense for me now when you just answering Nicole's last question about how you actually experience something similar, and then of course now using your skill set as a filmmaker to now tell someone else's story who is experiencing something similar as well and is not in the same class as you. I'm sure you were able to maybe find another house, rent, move to Lagos, make more films and all of that. But I wonder, you spoke about your relationship with the ballet, right? You met him in 2022. It took you a while to build up trust and be able to go into the society and film. Now that this displacement is going on, I wonder if you're still in contact with him. Has he relocated? What's being like? Do you know much about what's being done for some of these families? What's the latest from someone who actually lives in that community?
Yeah, I actually spoke to the ballet yesterday. The demolition that's been happening, he said that, according to him, he said that they did not work yesterday, so they didn't demolish yesterday, but they've gotten very close to his house. So his house is quite far away from the power line that they say that they want to demolish. Right. And so for the fact that they're only about, he said, according to him, 10 houses away. So which means that just 1 or 2 more days of demolition, they're going to get to him. He also told me that today they planned on burning the places that they have already broken down. So, I mean, I can't confirm it because I'm not there. But that's what I'm told, and that's what the ballet has told me. I think I will mention that if anyone watches the film, they'll also understand that the ballet doesn't have the full story. There's another person there, his name is Caleb Dugsugan. He runs an organization called Fremosi, which is like they advocate for their own people. He lives in Makoko. His grandfather was Makoko, and they fight against like the displacement. They have protests and all those things. And he was possibly people that represented the community during that time in their court case last year. So he has a more clearer picture of what's happening and the severity of the issue. And according to him, he believes that like people are saying that they're going to wipe out the entire community this time. So that's what I know. That's the latest from the people that are there right now.
Thank you for that update.
Wow. I mean, before we let you go, we understand that you use your platform and your voice to mentor young creatives in your community. So how does empowering the next generation of storytellers connect to a larger purpose behind the film and the work as a whole?
Full transparency, it's not like I mentor a whole lot. I teach about 10 to 15 kids.
That's still more than your average.
And we pause the program, but it's a program in my local church that just teaches kids how to make film, and they teach them how to do photography. And so I've been doing it for about 2 years, and got the kids from not being able to, like, never holding a camera to making our first short film a while ago. And I feel like it's very important because it's a form of economic empowerment. I think film is a great source of income, and I just wanted to show them that, you don't have to, if you want to, you can, but you don't have to be a hairdresser.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go into something vocational with your hands. You can be creative. And I also tell them, like, regardless of wherever you go in your practice, whether you are a hairdresser, film will always be an asset. Yeah. It's to make ads, make sure you have an online presence. It was just a way of economic empowerment for me. I think now is most important.
Yeah, and we thank you so much for doing that, and of course for shining a light on the Makoko community. I'm looking at our YouTube comments, and so many people are saying, "Wow, Yinka, thank you so much for telling this story," and I stand with them. So we appreciate you, and we'll continue to look out for you, Yinka Babalola, creative producer and of course a filmmaker.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.